I never thought one favor could rearrange the entire map of my identity, but life has a strange way of turning quick decisions into long-term consequences. Everything started the morning my cousin Zara called me, sounding more panicked than I'd ever heard her. Her voice shook as she explained that one of her bridesmaids had backed out at the last minute, right before the rehearsal photos and dress fitting. She said the wedding planner was furious, schedules were collapsing, and her entire picture-perfect ceremony was moments away from chaos. I tried to calm her down, telling her these things happen and that she'd figure something out, but she cut me off and said she already had. She whispered that she needed me to fill in, just for rehearsal, just so the photographer could stage the shots and the dress lineup would look even. She knew it sounded crazy. She knew it wasn't something I'd ever done, but she begged me, saying she couldn't afford another meltdown with everything else going wrong. I paced around my room, staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of the request. Me? As a bridesmaid? Even temporarily? I wasn't some confident performer or someone who liked standing out. I was just an ordinary guy who kept things simple. But hearing how desperate she was, how much this wedding meant to her, I couldn't say no. I told myself it was just a disguise, just a temporary costume, just one afternoon. Nobody outside the wedding party would ever know. So I swallowed my hesitation and agreed. When I arrived at the bridal suite, the chaos hit me immediately. Makeup artists rushed between chairs, hairstylists spun curling irons like weapons, bridesmaids trailed dresses behind them like pastel storms. Zara hugged me so tightly I could barely breathe and thanked me 1,000 times, saying it would only take a few hours. Then the wedding planner swooped in, eyeing me like a puzzle piece she wasn't sure would fit. She muttered something about my shoulders being broad, my jawline being sharp, but then she clapped her hands and instructed the seamstress to work her magic. I felt heat rise in my cheeks as the seamstress led me behind a divider, holding a long blush-pink bridesmaid gown. She spoke with such authority that I felt like I was shrinking inside myself. She handed me soft underlayers, a padded bralette, shaping pieces, and told me to get changed while she adjusted the dress. I hesitated, staring at the pile of unfamiliar garments. It felt surreal, like I had stepped into someone else's life. Still, I slipped into everything as instructed. The shapewear hugged tightly around my waist, sculpting curves I had never possessed. The padded bralette created a silhouette in the mirror that looked foreign, almost like an imitation of femininity, but convincing enough to fool the eye at a glance. When I finally stepped into the gown and the seamstress zipped it up, I froze. The dress clung perfectly, smoothing over every contour the shapewear created. The color softened my face, even without makeup. The reflection didn't look like me. It looked like a version of me I had never imagined. Before I could fully process it, the makeup artist grabbed my hand and pulled me into a chair. She studied my face with an expression of determination, like an artist analyzing a canvas. She dabbed foundation, brushed shadows, added a soft pink glow, and suddenly my jaw looked smaller. My eyes looked larger, and my features took on an unexpectedly gentle shape. I knew it was still me beneath the transformation, but each layer of makeup dimmed the familiarity a bit more. Then came the wig, long, glossy hair that framed my face in waves. When she settled it on my head and secured it, my breath caught. I didn't recognize the person in the mirror. Not even slightly. The bridesmaids gasped, complimenting the work as if I wasn't standing there overwhelmed. Zara rushed over and covered her mouth in shock before hugging me again, thanking me so sincerely that I felt a knot twist in my chest. She introduced me as Amna, a temporary name they gave me for the day so nobody would slip up. I tried to laugh, but the sound came out thin. It wasn't fear exactly, more like a strange unease mixed with an unfamiliar flutter of excitement. The dress swayed around my legs when I walked, the hair brushed my shoulders, the heels forced me into delicate steps. Every movement felt borrowed from someone else. The rehearsal photos began shortly after. The photographer directed us into poses, arranging us in soft arcs around Zara, adjusting hair, lifting bouquets, and telling us to tilt our heads this way and that. I kept waiting for someone to look at me too closely, to notice something wrong, to call out the truth. But nobody did. In every photo, I blended seamlessly with the others. They laughed, whispered jokes, and treated me like I belonged. And the longer it continued, the more I felt the disguise anchor itself around me, not physically, but emotionally. The makeup wasn't heavy, but the role was. I could feel it settling into my posture, my voice, my breathing. After hours of posing and walking and standing in formation, we finally took a break. I hurried back to the bridal suite, ready to peel off the layers and just be myself again. But when I tried to unzip the dress, my fingers slipped. I twisted, pulled, tugged. The zipper wouldn't budge. I called for the seamstress, who frowned as she examined it. She tried once, twice, 3 times before muttering that the zipper had jammed itself into the lining. She said she'd need tools to remove it without ripping the fabric, and she had already left for the day. The planner said the dress must remain intact for the wedding tomorrow, so they couldn't risk damaging it tonight. That meant I had to keep it on until morning. I felt my stomach drop. I managed to laugh it off, acting like it was no big deal, but inside I felt strange, trapped between 2 identities. Zara insisted I stay the night in their guest room at the bridal venue. The girls thought it was hilarious, teasing me that it was fate making sure I looked perfect for the ceremony tomorrow. They didn't know I wasn't supposed to be part of the actual wedding lineup. Zara said she'd try to think of an alternative plan in the morning, but for night, they needed to finish the last bits of preparation as a group. So I sat with them, still in full disguise, as they shared stories, practiced speeches, and laughed over memories from school. I stayed mostly quiet, afraid my voice would break the illusion, but every now and then one of them would turn to me, smile, and include me as if I weren't an impersonator at all. It was strangely comforting. Later, when I finally stepped into the guest room alone, I stared at myself in the long mirror. The girl in the reflection looked calm, composed, almost graceful. It felt like I was looking at a stranger, yet that stranger moved exactly when I moved. I touched my face and she touched hers. I whispered my own name, and the sound felt disconnected. Then I whispered the fake name they had given me, Amna, and something in the reflection felt more aligned, almost too comfortably. I lay on the bed that night, unable to sleep, feeling the weight of the dress, the tightness of the shapewear, the delicate strands of the wig resting on my neck. It wasn't physically uncomfortable, just emotionally confusing. I told myself everything would go back to normal tomorrow. The dress would come off, the makeup would wash away, the wig would be boxed up, and I would return to myself. But as my eyes finally closed, I couldn't shake the feeling that a small, quiet shift had already begun somewhere inside me. I woke up the next morning with a strange heaviness in my chest, like I had dreamt something important but couldn't remember what. The sunlight spilled through the curtains in soft, golden lines, illuminating the dress that still wrapped around me like a second skin. For a moment, half asleep, I forgot everything and simply stared at the soft pink fabric draped across me. Then reality rushed back, hitting with equal parts dread and confusion. I sat up slowly. The wig slightly shifted from sleeping, the makeup faintly smudged but still surprisingly intact. My reflection in the window looked like someone waking from an enchanted spell, caught between 2 selves. I stood and walked to the mirror, bracing my hands on the table as I looked at the girl staring back. Somehow, she looked even more real in the morning light.
Softer, calmer.
Her eyes held a depth I hadn't noticed yesterday. Something quietly unfolding. I touched the fabric at my waist and tried once again to pull the zipper. Nothing. It wasn't even stuck, just immovable, like it had merged with the dress itself. My breath grew tight as I pulled again and again, each attempt more desperate than the last. I told myself not to panic. The seamstress would fix it. Everything would go back to normal. But even as I repeated that, a small voice inside whispered that things were already shifting, and nothing felt as certain as before. Zara burst into the room a few minutes later, already in a robe with her hair pinned up. She gasped when she saw me, half because I was still fully dressed, and half because I looked, as she put it, weirdly natural this morning. She tugged gently at the zipper, then harder, then stepped back with the same expression the seamstress had worn the night before. Okay, she said softly. Don't freak out. We'll get her to come early today. She can cut through the lining without damaging anything. She smiled reassuringly, but the smile didn't quite reach her eyes. She was nervous too, I could tell. The bridal suite soon filled again with buzzing activity. Makeup brushes, curling irons, perfume mists, everything swirled around in a blur of excitement and stress. The bridesmaids greeted me with cheerful voices, none of them questioning why I still looked exactly like last night. Someone fixed the wig, someone refreshed my makeup, someone handed me a fresh bouquet to practice with. And I stood there letting them. It felt easier than explaining, easier than insisting, easier than admitting I wasn't supposed to be there at all. The wedding planner walked in, saw me among the other bridesmaids, and just nodded approvingly before diving back into her orders. She had no idea I was only meant to be a stand-in yesterday. Everything moved so quickly that my original reason for being there seemed to dissolve into the chaos. I kept waiting for the seamstress to arrive, but the planner told us she was delayed by traffic and wouldn't make it until right before the ceremony. My stomach twisted. That meant I couldn't change. Not yet. By the time the rehearsal walk began, the planner had fully accepted me as part of the group. She arranged us in a careful formation, handed each of us the matching shawls, and instructed us to walk slowly, gracefully, smiling just enough to appear natural. Every step I took felt surreal. The dress flowed with each movement, brushing lightly against my legs, guiding my steps into softness. The wig swayed across my shoulders, warm and strangely comforting. The makeup made my expressions gentle, delicate. My voice, when I had to speak, automatically softened to match. Nobody questioned a thing. And the more they didn't question it, the more I questioned myself. When we finished, Zara pulled me aside. Her face looked conflicted, torn between gratitude and guilt. She said quietly, "Look, everyone already thinks you're one of the bridesmaids. The photos, the video, the rehearsal, everything includes you. And with the seamstress so late, maybe just for today, for the ceremony, you can help me hold it together? I promise after the wedding we'll sort everything out." Her eyes shimmered with genuine worry. She wasn't forcing me. She was pleading. I should have said no. I should have insisted this wasn't my place. But the moment she said the words, something in my chest loosened, like a puzzle piece slotting into place. I wasn't just wearing the disguise anymore. I had become it. Or, at least, I had stepped so deeply into it that stepping out felt impossible. I nodded. Zara hugged me again, this time longer and tighter. Relief flooded her face. She whispered, "Thank you, Amna. I knew I could count on you." She used the name again. That name. And when she did, I didn't correct her. We moved into the final preparations. The other bridesmaids helped me fix a slight smudge in my eyeliner, straighten the pleats of my dress, adjusted my shawl, and chatted with me like we had known each other for years. I kept waiting for the moment I'd feel like a fraud again. But instead, every time I saw myself in the full-length mirrors lining the hallway, the sense of fraud faded a little more. What replaced it was strange, fragile, and impossible to name. The ceremony started later that afternoon. The music swelled through the hall, soft and dramatic, and we lined up in formation. My heart hammered so loudly I thought everyone could hear it. The planner clapped her hands, signaling us forward. One by one, the bridesmaids began walking down the aisle, graceful and poised. When my turn came, I inhaled deeply, stepped forward, and the entire room blurred. The lights shimmered, the gown fluttered around my steps, and the air felt warm and weightless. I could feel hundreds of eyes, but none of them felt sharp. They didn't pierce through me. They didn't question me. They accepted what they saw. For the first time in my life, I felt invisible and visible at the same time, hidden inside a role yet illuminated by it. When we reached the stage, I took my place beside the others. The ceremony unfolded like a dream. The vows, the music, the quiet sniffles from the guests. I watched Zara smile through her tears and felt proud, genuinely proud, to be standing there with her. But somewhere under all that pride was a deeper, more confusing emotion simmering quietly. When the ceremony ended and the guests applauded, I thought everything would collapse. Someone would finally notice. Someone would pull me aside, whispering that the act was over. But nothing happened. People congratulated the bridesmaids. Some even complimented me directly. And I responded naturally, gracefully, automatically. Like this identity wasn't just a disguise, but something I'd been carrying quietly inside me without realizing. The seamstress finally arrived in the evening, apologizing for being late. The planner rushed her toward us, telling her I needed to be unzipped so I could change for the dinner. The seamstress examined the dress carefully, muttering again about the zipper being unusually fused. She tried tools, needles, even cooling spray. Nothing worked. She whispered to the planner that she might need to cut through the entire back panel to free me, but that would destroy the dress. The planner panicked. Zara panicked. The other bridesmaids panicked. And I just stood there, strangely calm, as if part of me already knew. The dress wasn't coming off.
Not today.
Not yet. The moment the seamstress whispered those words, a hush fell over the room. It wasn't dramatic or loud, just a soft, collective silence that made my skin prickle. Zara's eyes widened with a mixture of guilt and disbelief. The wedding planner pressed her hand to her forehead, pacing like she was calculating the cost of every possible disaster at once. The bridesmaids exchanged looks that hovered somewhere between sympathy and amazement. And I stood in the middle of it all, wrapped in a dress that refused to let me go. I waited for someone to decide something, to take control of the moment, to tell me what to do. But instead, they all hovered, unsure, almost afraid of making it worse. The seamstress tried again, tugging at the zipper with a quiet desperation. She whispered that she'd never seen fabric behave like this, that the lining had somehow tangled itself in a way that shouldn't even be possible. She suggested that maybe, after the reception, she could take the dress back to her studio and work on it overnight with specialized tools. That meant one thing: I would remain exactly as I was for the entire night. The planner forced a polite smile and said it would be fine, that nobody would notice, that I looked perfect anyway. But I noticed the way she avoided eye contact. She wasn't worried about how I looked. She was worried about control, about the unpredictability of the situation. Zara, however, looked at me with something else entirely. A softness mixed with gratitude, maybe even understanding. She placed her hands on my shoulders and said, "It's just for tonight. Tomorrow morning we'll fix everything." She said the words slowly, gently, but even she didn't sound completely certain. I nodded anyway. What else could I do? As we walked out to join the reception, my steps were slow, deliberate. Not because the heels were difficult, but because I felt myself sinking deeper into the strange sensation I'd been trying to ignore. The fabric clinging to me, the weight of the wig, the softness of the makeup, they should have felt foreign, temporary, uncomfortable. But instead, they felt familiar now, as if I'd worn them far longer than a single day. The reception hall glowed with warm lights and laughter. Guests danced, clinked glasses, took photos. When Zara and her husband entered, everyone cheered. I stood with the bridesmaids, smiling, feeling the energy vibrate through the room. Several guests complimented us as they passed by, stopping occasionally to admire our dresses or ask about the wedding. A few even mistook me for one of Zara's close college friends. I corrected no one. At one point, an older woman, someone's aunt, approached us and gently held my hand. She told me I looked beautiful, that my soft features made me stand out in the most delicate way. Her words should have embarrassed me, should have triggered that instinct to step back and clarify everything. But instead, something warm spread in my chest. I thanked her quietly, and she smiled before moving on. The bridesmaids pulled me into their conversations as naturally as if I had always been one of them. They laughed, leaned against me, fixed my shawl when it slipped, handed me tissues when the emotional speeches began. I caught glimpses of myself reflected in the decorative glass panels around the hall, sometimes from far away, sometimes in close detail. And each time, the girl in the reflection looked increasingly like someone real, someone whole. The night stretched long. The dancing grew wilder. The music softened. The guests began to drift away. When the hall finally emptied out, it was just us, the wedding party, tidying up stray decorations and saying our last goodbyes. Zara hugged me, tears in her eyes, thanking me for everything. Her words were warm, sincere, but tinged with something deeper. "You saved me," she whispered. "I'll never forget this." As we headed toward the bridal rooms, exhaustion settled in. All I wanted was to sit, breathe, maybe even sleep. But the moment I stepped inside and saw myself again in the mirror, that exhaustion faded into a quiet stillness. The dress shimmered softly in the dim lighting. The wig rested around my shoulders like a curtain of comfort. The makeup, though worn, still framed my face with an elegance I had never thought possible. Zara touched my arm gently. "We'll handle it tomorrow, okay?" I nodded. She left the room, and I stood alone once more. I walked slowly toward the mirror, the sound of my heels soft on the carpet. I stared, not in panic, not in shock, just observation. The reflection looked peaceful, authentic, not pretending, not struggling. The disguise didn't feel like a costume anymore. It felt like a version of myself untangling from somewhere deep beneath the surface. I reached up, fingers brushing the wig lightly. I expected to feel a disconnect, the reminder that it wasn't real hair, that this wasn't truly me. But instead, I felt something different. Connection. Comfort. Like removing it would leave me exposed in a way I wasn't ready for. I tried again to tug at the dress, even though I knew it wouldn't work. The zipper refused to move, unmoved by my attempts. It wasn't the fabric that trapped me, it was something else entirely. A quiet acceptance growing inside me, a realization forming slowly, cautiously. That night, as I lay down still fully transformed, I didn't feel suffocated. I didn't feel overwhelmed. I felt held.
Contained.
Like the version of myself I had lived as all my life was suddenly the one that felt temporary, fragile, and easily undone. Sleep found me slowly. My thoughts drifted between confusion and clarity, between identity and disguise. I didn't have answers, only questions that felt too large to fit inside me. Who was I beneath this dress? Who was I without it? Why did this role feel so natural when it wasn't supposed to? Morning came quietly. Sunlight warmed the edges of the room. I blinked awake, feeling the unfamiliar yet comforting weight of the dress once more. When I sat up and saw myself again, the realization struck me, not like a shock, but like a whisper carried on a soft breeze. I didn't want to take it off. Not yet. And maybe not ever. The morning after the wedding felt unusually silent. No rushing footsteps, no buzzing hairstylists, no nervous chatter from bridesmaids. Just a gentle stillness that settled around me like morning fog. For a moment, lying on the soft guest room bed, I forgot I was wearing the dress at all. It had molded to me so completely that it no longer felt foreign, just present. When I finally sat up and the fabric shifted around my waist, the quiet reminder made my heart thump softly. I walked to the mirror as if pulled by something invisible. And once again, the reflection greeted me like someone familiar. My makeup was faded, but the softness it added remained. The wig had slipped slightly, but still framed my face in a way that made my features feel balanced, purposeful. Even the faint wrinkles in the dress from sleeping looked natural, like part of me rather than something worn. A gentle knock came at the door. Zara peeked inside, her eyes landing on me. Relief and worry mixed on her face. "Morning," she said softly. "Sleep okay?" I nodded. She stepped in, closing the door quietly behind her. "The seamstress is downstairs. She brought everything she needs to fix the zipper." Her voice was hesitant, watching my reaction more carefully than I expected. A small twist formed in my stomach. Not quite fear. Not quite calm. Something in between. Zara continued, her voice quieter. "She can do it now. She said it might take a bit, but she'll get you out of it." She paused, then added gently, "If you want." If you want. The room suddenly felt smaller. All night, I'd known this moment was coming. The moment I would shed the disguise, wash off the makeup, return the wig, and step back into the identity I had always known. But now that it was here, something inside me recoiled. The idea of losing this softness, this reflection, this strange sense of alignment, it unsettled me in a way I didn't have words for. Zara must have seen it on my face. She sat beside me on the edge of the bed. "There's no rush," she said. "You've done more for me than I can ever repay. If you're overwhelmed, I get it. Yesterday was a lot." I swallowed tightly. Overwhelmed didn't describe it. It wasn't fear or embarrassment. It was a strange, hollow ache at the thought of undoing everything. We walked downstairs together. Each step felt heavier than it should have. The seamstress was already in the sitting room, tools laid out on the table, tiny scissors, special pliers, gentle fabric-loosening sprays. She smiled at me kindly, motioning for me to sit. I did, the dress pooling around me like petals. She began working on the zipper slowly, patiently. The metal resisted her tools with an almost stubborn determination. I could feel her tugging gently at the back of the dress, hear the faint clicks of her tools. Every sound made something in my chest tighten. After several minutes, she sighed and spoke to Zara in a low voice. "It's doable," she said, "but the zipper is fused deeper than expected. To avoid tearing the fabric, I'll need another 30 minutes at least." Zara nodded. I nodded too, but my heartbeat was anything but calm. As the seamstress resumed her careful work, I stared at the floor, feeling each passing moment push me closer to an outcome I wasn't sure I wanted. The dress had felt like a trap yesterday. Now it felt like something entirely different. Something safe. Something I wasn't ready to let go of. Then, unexpectedly, Zara spoke. "Can we take a break?" She looked at the seamstress, who blinked in surprise but agreed politely. The tools were set aside. Zara sat across from me this time, folding her hands. "Tell me honestly," she said gently. "Are you okay?" I looked up at her. My voice felt small. "I don't know." She nodded, encouraging. "Does the dress bother you? Or is it something else?" I exhaled shakily. Yesterday was supposed to be temporary.
Just helping you.
But when I woke up today, I didn't feel like I was pretending anymore. Zara's expression softened. Not judgment. Not confusion. Just understanding. "You looked comfortable," she whispered. "Almost peaceful." I lowered my gaze. When you said the seamstress could take it off, I felt something inside me pull back. Like I wasn't ready to say goodbye. The words surprised me even as they came out. Zara leaned forward, voice warm. "Then don't." I looked up sharply.
"What?"
"You don't have to rush back to anything," she said. "You helped me when I needed you. Now let me help you. If you feel connected to this, even a little, you're allowed to explore that. Nobody is telling you who you should be." I felt something break open inside me. Relief, fear, hope, all tangled together. She continued. "You can keep wearing it a while. Let it settle. Decide what it means later. No pressure." The seamstress looked uncertain, but nodded respectfully. "The zipper's not going anywhere," she added quietly. "I can fix it whenever you're truly ready." That phrase hung in the air. "Whenever you're truly ready." Zara asked gently, "Do you want more time?" My answer came, without hesitation. Yes. The seamstress packed her tools. The tension in the room eased like a held breath finally released. Zara gave me a soft, relieved smile. "Then you can stay with us today. Just the bridesmaids. We're having a small morning after gathering. You're part of that now."
Part of that now.
As we walked to the garden area where the girls were waiting, I expected nerves to rise, for panic to set in. But instead, an unexpected warmth spread through me. The sun lit up the garden, casting soft glimmers across the pastel dresses. When the bridesmaids saw me, they cheered lightly. "There she is," one of them laughed. "Looking like she just stepped out of a magazine shoot." Another fixed a stray strand of the wig. A third complimented my posture. They all treated me like I belonged, with a kindness so effortless it made my chest tighten. Throughout the morning, we talked, laughed, ate pastries, took photos on their phones, listened to wedding stories, and simply enjoyed the calm after the chaos. Every time I caught my reflection in a window, soft hair, flowing gown, gentle expression, I felt that same quiet sensation settling into me. I wasn't losing myself. I was discovering something I had never given myself permission to see before. When the gathering ended, and we returned inside, Zara squeezed my hand. "We'll figure everything out," she said softly. "You don't have to decide who you are right away. Just be honest with yourself." I nodded slowly. For the first time, honesty didn't feel frightening. I walked back to the guest room, each step light, calm, grounded. I stood before the mirror one more time, watching my own eyes stare back with a newfound clarity. It wasn't the disguise that was becoming my identity. It was the truth beneath it, slowly rising to the surface. And I wasn't ready to let go. Not today. Maybe not ever. The house grew quieter as the afternoon stretched toward evening, the warm glow of the sun dimming into soft amber. I stayed in the guest room longer than I realized, simply sitting, breathing, letting everything sink deeper instead of trying to push it away. For the first time in my life, I felt like I wasn't wrestling with myself. I was just listening. I moved to the mirror again, not to inspect, not to question, but simply to acknowledge. The dress still held to me with that strange, subtle resistance, like it had been waiting for me to catch up to something it already knew. The wig settled gracefully around my shoulders, and my face, still framed by fading but gentle makeup, looked calm. Not pretending calm. Real calm. A soft knock came at the door. When I opened it, one of the bridesmaids, Tessa, stood there with 2 mugs of tea. She handed me one without a word and sat on the foot of the bed. The quiet between us was comfortable, and when she did speak, it was in a slow, thoughtful voice. "You know," she said, staring into her tea, "when Zara first told us what happened yesterday, I thought you'd be terrified. But you blended in like you've been doing it your whole life." I swallowed, unsure how to respond. She added, "I hope you know we weren't laughing at you. We were just surprised. You carried yourself in that dress like it was made for you. Not because it fit, but because you fit." Her words tugged at something inside me. I sipped my tea to steady myself. I didn't expect to feel this way, I admitted. It was supposed to be a one-time thing. A favor. But now, my voice drifted. I wasn't sure how to finish the sentence. Tessa finished it for me, gently. "Now you're wondering what it means." I nodded. She placed her hand lightly on mine. "No one here is judging you. And you're not hurting anyone by just being yourself, even if you're still figuring out who that is." Her kindness settled over me like a blanket. She didn't push for answers. She didn't try to label anything. She just offered understanding. After she left, I found myself walking slowly through the hallway, feeling the sway of the dress with every step. It wasn't cumbersome anymore. It wasn't awkward. It was grounding, balancing, like it helped me move in a way that felt instinctive. Eventually, I wandered outside into the cool evening air. The backyard was quiet, string lights still hanging from the reception the night before. They swayed gently in the breeze, flickering softly. I stepped onto the patio, the dress brushing the ground lightly, and listened to the wind. Every sound felt amplified, the chirping of insects, the rustle of leaves, the distant hum of cars on the road. For the first time, everything around me seemed to match the stillness I felt inside. A moment later, I heard footsteps behind me. It was Zara. She walked beside me and leaned on the railing, gazing out at the yard. "You've been quiet today," she said softly. I looked at the lights, the soft colors reflecting off the dress. "I'm trying to understand myself. And I'm scared that once I take this off, it'll all disappear." Zara rested her hand on my shoulder. "Clothes don't make or erase who you are. They just help you see parts of yourself more clearly. If this," she gestured gently at me, "feels right, or even just feels like something you want to explore, there's nothing wrong with that." I took a shaky breath. "But what if I don't know what it means yet?" "Then you don't need to," she said simply. "You don't have to have a definition. Sometimes identity isn't a sudden decision. Sometimes it's something that grows slowly, quietly, until you look at yourself one day and realize you've arrived." Her words washed over me, grounding me even further. She continued, "The dress isn't who you are, but the way you feel when you wear it. That's something worth listening to." We stood there in silence for a long time, the string lights flickering above us. Eventually, Zara turned to me and asked, "Do you still want the seamstress to take it off tonight?" I waited. I let the question breathe. And then I felt the answer rise from somewhere quiet but certain inside me. "No," I said. "Not yet."
Zara nodded, not surprised.
We went back inside together. The house felt warm, familiar. When I re-entered the guest room, the mirror reflected the same calm expression I had started to recognize as my own. I stepped closer, studying the reflection not for flaws or differences, but for recognition. And I found it there, subtle but real. The dress hadn't trapped me.
It had opened something.
Maybe it wasn't about transformation. Maybe it was about uncovering. The person I had been before wasn't disappearing. They were blending, shifting, expanding into something truer, something fuller. I sat down, smoothing the skirt over my lap, feeling the fabric settle around me like an embrace. And for the first time, I didn't think about when it would come off, or what people would think,
Or what I should be.
I only thought about how I felt.
Whole.
Quietly, unexpectedly whole. Night settled in, and the room darkened except for the soft glow from the hallway. I lay back on the bed, dress and all, and closed my eyes. My thoughts drifted, not in chaos, but in gentle, steady waves. I didn't have all the answers. I didn't have a name for everything I felt, but I didn't need one tonight. All I knew was that the dress didn't feel like a disguise anymore. It felt like a beginning. And as sleep finally pulled me under, I held on to that truth with a calm certainty. I couldn't take it off yet, not because I was stuck, but because, for the first time, it felt like staying exactly where I belonged.